Hello, world. What separated your deep ball from everybody else?
My deep ball, it has a little secret sauce to it, man.
Never get too high, never get too low, but just keep moving.
The whole story is Carlos never beat me in any kind of sports in high school.
Welcome to the Orange is the New Black podcast. I'm your host, Ace Boogie, joined by my co-host, Zim. Zim, say what's up.
Hello, world. We got something very, very special, I think, tonight. If you guys are a Bengals fan, guys or girl are a Bengals fan, and you currently listen to podcasts like I do every day of my life, then you know that there is another podcast that does a lot of good stuff on a daily basis. Nice. It's Locked On Bengals. We got Jake from Locked On Bengals live with us tonight. Jake, talk to the people. Tell them how you're doing tonight.
You know what? I appreciate you not making a State Farm joke. Jake from Locked On Bengals. That's right. What's good, people? I'm happy to be here. I always enjoy these guys. But, you know, you're really kind. You're saying nice things about my podcast. I don't know what that's about.
It's pretty sweet. Like, who doesn't? I mean, I used to write for Locked On. So, you know, talk to James. So, you know, like, I know about Locked On Bengals.
I didn't know we ever had writers. Yeah,
I wrote a little bit. I used to get stuff off my chest and.
Oh, you mean the website James used to do? I feel, yeah.
Yeah. So at that point, I felt like it was connected to that. So
you used to call in all the time. You had like your own segment over there, Zim. You would like call in when James would take like fan mail and stuff like that.
You know what's so crazy? That was on ESPN, and what's so crazy is James filled in on Wednesday. Yeah, yesterday, and I called in yesterday, so I'm gonna put the audio up for that because it's kind of funny because 3-4 years ago I would go on hold for like an hour or 2 hours and I wouldn't even talk. But nowadays, you know, James, he like pushed me forward on the list, so they let me talk. I talked about how getting Tooney was a mistake, and I was ready for everyone to stab me afterwards, but. That's the
way the narrative is going. Bengals Twitter. I mean, there's still people out there that are like, "Give me Tooney or give me death." You know what I'm saying? But there's a lot of people that are looking at this guard class, and I mean, we don't have to get too far into it right now. But
before we get into that, because I think that's a great segue to get into the Tooney talk. I want to find out what side of the railroad tracks are you on? Are you on the Tooney gang or whatever, right? But before we get that. Tell everybody how you got involved with Locked On Bengals, how long you've been a Bengals fan, and just give us the juice, baby.
All right, man. Well, so I grew up in Cincinnati, Princeton High School guy, because that's a question everybody asks when you grow up in Cincinnati, what high school you go to. But I don't really remember the Bengals before Marvin Lewis. When they hired Marvin Lewis, I would have been 12, 13 years old. I don't really remember. But when they hired Marvin Lewis, it was like, this is a big deal. Like they got a real, actual football coach. And then they draft Carson Palmer, and it's like, okay, they got, I mean, to 12-year-old me, a guy that can go be the best quarterback of all time. And in 2005, I was, you know, a junior in high school at that point, I guess. So maybe this timeline isn't working out, but whatever. I was watching Carson Palmer play, and I'm writing at the time, like, Carson Palmer is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And I think you could probably back that up. He was really good. He could have been really good. And so that hooked me because, you know, I'm still young. I'm like the Bengals, this team in my city, they don't suck anymore. And so I'm in it. And then Locked On came about just because Joe Goodberry and I go back. And Joe Goodberry couldn't do a podcast by himself. No shade, Joe, but you would admit it, I think, yourself. And so I went on with him and did it with him.
Nah, that's dope. I remember like you touched on Carson in 2005 being a top 5 quarterback. I think if people were aware of him at that time, I think it was pretty much Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees maybe at that point. Like he still hadn't really on. He wasn't there yet. It could have been Carson Palmer. Like I really feel like 05 around that time, I remember feeling like he could be like top 3, top 5. So I don't think that's too far-fetched at all.
That's what it was for me. It was Peyton, Brady, and Carson. Right. And then you're like pretty quick after that, Drew Brees came along. But PFF went up in 2006. You can go back to 2006. You can go back and look. Carson's number 5, 2006. I just pulled it up. Peyton, Brees, Romo, Brady, Palmer.
Yeah, Palmer was that guy. So you talked a little bit about the guard play. And we all know, like, as Bengals analysts and stuff like that, we're on Twitter and we've heard all of this kind of love affair that you kind of alluded to with Joe Thuney. And, you know, me and Zim, we've always subscribed to never get too honed in on one person, because that way, if the Bengals don't sign him or it doesn't happen, you're not like kicking yourself and frustrated. But in terms of the Thuney situation, like, what is your view on just Joe Thuney in Cincinnati and just that whole deal in terms of free agency?
I mean, I think it's really inflated because he's from the area. And so people have it in their heads like, let's get the hometown guy back. You know, but it shouldn't matter. Like, Andrew Norwell's from the area too. I don't care. Jackson Carman is from Cincinnati. I don't care really. Like, that shouldn't actually matter. But I think fans have it in their head that he's going to take less money. Maybe that's where it started. He's going to take less money to come to Cincinnati. There's people out there that say, you know, he wants to come to Cincinnati if the money's right. And I believe that, because money talks.
Right.
But where I'm at on Joe Thuney is, I don't think there's one way that's right. I think there's a path forward with Joe Thuney, that they sign Joe Thuney and that ends up being right. And there's a path forward where they sign Kevin Zeitler and Darrell Williams, and that ends up being right. I mean, there's not just one way. Joe Thuney's a really good player, and I said on the podcast that's about to go up for Locked On Bengals tonight, I would rather have, you know, Joe Thuney than Corey Linsley if you're talking about spending on an interior offensive lineman. But that's just because I think that guard play is more valuable than center play. So they need to get better at guard. There's a lot of ways to do it. The question for me, and I've talked about this a lot, is, are the Bengals going to put up the cash? Because you got to put up the cash to make it work with the cap. And the Bengals generally don't put up the cash. They don't like those big signing bonuses. You know, you talk about Trent Williams. Zim, you've been in my mentions talking about Trent Williams. He wants $65 million guaranteed dollars. Bengals are never touching that number. Never. Maybe in like 20 years.
But spread across how long though?
It doesn't matter because for the Bengals it's a cash issue. It's not a cap issue, right? He wants like a $40 million signing bonus with $25 million in guaranteed salary. Maybe a bigger signing bonus.
You think he wants a $40 million signing bonus?
It's Trent Williams.
Yeah.
For
It's
sure.
Trent Williams.
I mean, I don't think it's like, let's go to over the cap rate and let's look at some tackle contracts, because I think he's going to be the highest paid tackle in the NFL.
All right. So this is the number one reason why I bring up Trent Williams. The number one reason why I bring up Trent Williams is because Bengals fans, I think, collectively somehow believe that Joe Thuney is like some dominant force and is the best offensive lineman like available. So when I'm bringing up Trent Williams, I'm bringing up the fact that Trent Williams currently is the number one tackle rated in the NFL, right? Before we talk about dollars and cents or anything like that, if you want to make a splash, you go get the very best tackle in the NFL. And then it goes back to your first thing where you're saying there's no right or wrong way. You could give me Thuney and we could go to the chip. We can figure out a way to do it that way, right? But I guess just from my philosophy standpoint, I'm putting way more equity, I'm putting way more stock into the tackle position, period. So every single time that Trent Williams comes up or Darrell Williams comes up or Rick Wagner, somebody comes up, I'm hopping at that because I just see I'm trying to correct the wrong that they made with Whitworth. You know, I've been trying to correct that for years. So that's just a philosophy thing. And I tell people that a lot of times because they're like, why are you so down on Thuney? It's not that I'm down on Thuney. It's just that I know the Bengals, once they go out and make that splash with a guy like Thuney, it's going to be very little that they're going to do from the offensive line. And I fear that knowing the history of this team, if he were to suffer any type of injury or anything like that, I'd rather not do it that way. I'd rather go and solidify the tackle position and then go get me a whole boatload of guards, like above average, higher tier. As this thing is unfolding, there's so many guys like a Gabe Jackson that I think maybe not as good as Thuney, but if we're talking solid, he's solid. You know what I mean? And he's for way less money. So
and that's what you need.
And it's just a philosophy thing.
Well, and that's all you need at guard is you need to get to solid. Because none of these guys at guard, there's a lot of guards in this class that are likely to be available, like Gabe Jackson, who hasn't been released yet, actually, but is likely to be released, right? There's a lot of guys that look like they're really good pass blockers. But if you want to get a lot of money at guard, you got to be good at both, because guards just don't get paid. So if you want to get paid a lot at guard, you got to be Quentin Nelson, right? You got to be able to win as a run blocker too. And they just don't do that. The guys that are available right now are average at best run blockers, including Joe Thuney. And, well, Kevin Zeitler might be a little bit better than average. He's probably above average as a run blocker, right guard, traditional strength kind of power guy. But, yeah, I mean, I think that I'm there with you on the interior offensive line. I think that you can get good players for less than Joe Thuney money, because Joe Thuney is a top of market kind of player. And you can make your team a lot better, because the difference between poor and average on an offensive line, much, much more important than the difference between average and elite. Hey, I see you, Orange Arrow. Hey, Orange Arrow is the guy that sent me this shirt. This was my prize for winning the Bengals Cares League. It's a good shirt, man.
Right. Yeah, we actually interviewed
Macho Means. Yeah, Macho Means.
I bought that.
And yeah, I'm about to say, and I think before we even interviewed you, you told me you love some of those designs, and to me, that's the best design that they got currently right now. So you're definitely a winner with that one. That's the best design.
Yeah.
Did you have any thoughts on that, Ace? Because I know a lot of people, including yourself, you were saying, well, one of the worst things right now, speak to the people that say, well, one of the worst things that quarterbacks don't want is pressure up the middle.
Yeah, I think that's definitely valid and true. And I think just listening to Jake when they had on our offensive coordinator Callahan, he talked about that. You know, he talked about being able to scheme from edge pressure, but what people don't want to see is straight up the middle. Obviously, that kind of happened with Joe Burrow last season. And I think what you guys are saying is valid. The last thing that you want to do, and the last thing that I even think that the Bengals are going to do, is overpay for a guard, right? If Joe Thuney is asking for 13, 14 million a season, I just don't see that happening. If he does want to take a home downtown discount, maybe. But now you have Kevin Zeitler back in the fold as well, right? You got Larry Warford, who was out last season. We don't know whether he's coming back. If he does come back, there's no way, in my opinion, that he can command a bunch of money after sitting the season out, especially after having some weight issues in New Orleans. And so I think as long as you just get some solid guys there, you don't have to overextend yourself. But I also agree with Jake. I would love Trent Williams here, right? I don't think anybody on this panel would say no to Trent Williams. Yeah. But the fact that he is definitively like a top 3 tackle in the NFL, like if he asks for whatever, somebody's going to give it to him, whether it's someone in Cincinnati, whether it's someone somewhere else. And I tend to agree with Jake, like in terms of that guaranteed money that they'd have to give up for him immediately, I don't see them doing that. But
they're not going to take
we would all love to have Trent Williams. That would just be a dream come true for sure.
Me being in the Washington area, right? A lot of people, I don't think a lot of Bengals fans, or I don't want to generalize people, but most people talk to me about Trent Williams and they automatically look at his age, right? And the same way that Bengals fans view Whitworth around here, Trent Williams is that times 2. You know what I'm saying? Because not only is he like a freak athlete? He had a year off, and he's the #1 tackle for. So a guy got on me today early on Twitter and was like, "Dude, why do you want this guy that's so old?" I'm like, "Listen, he's very, very different than whatever you're speaking." So I guess some of the things that I'm saying are just based on my preconception of what I think will make us a dominant force and what will make this thing pop off so fast and have Joe Burrow comfortable as possible. Because the #1 thing that I think about that Joe is going to need mentally early on, and we were talking about this the other day, Jake, is one, relief in the passing game and less passing. Whether it is an extension of the pass game and short passes, screens, and little dump offs and all types of little stuff like that, little wheel routes for running backs, whatever you could think of. That's fine, but at the end of the day, he needs a Whitworth-like figure at left tackle. And Panay, although he's comp for Trent Williams, right? Although I believe in him a lot, I don't want to go into the draft thinking, I got to get this guy, I would love to have that solidified and have Panay be like, I want to have hard problems, like tough problems. When I go to the draft, I already got Rick Wagner on the team, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to plug and play Panay on the team. Like in my dream scenario, that's how I would want it to go. To go into the draft, and I'm still looking for like this dominant force or whatever is not what I'm looking for, and I think that's why I lean so heavy towards Trent Williams. But he would absolutely take up every single bit of their cash, and I don't know what the cap hit would be, but currently right now we're at like $54 million before $15
million for Trey Waynes. I don't even know what it would be for Trent at all.
Well, they can get creative as far as the cap hit. That's great. But what Jake is saying is like the escrow account that says, no, put this damn cash right here to the side. The Bengals aren't going to pull that type of trigger.
Yeah, that's historically been their problem, right? But the one thing in their favor, I guess, is the recent CBA that just went into effect did mitigate the amount of cash teams have to put into escrow. It gave them a bigger allowance for signing bonus that you don't have to put away right away. The thing is, most signing bonuses are paid in the first year of the deal. So if Trent Williams is out there, maybe it's only $30 million. Go back last year and look at how much guaranteed money the Bengals gave away. Go look at how much signing bonus the Bengals gave away. That's pretty much all of it. So, I mean, you do $30 million in a signing bonus for one guy, that you're probably done if you're Mike Brown. Just historically speaking, you're probably not like, yeah, I got another $50 million sitting around that we'll give up. And that's why the question for me has been cash all offseason. It's been, is Mike Brown and family ready to pony up the cash right now to be flexible with the cap? And I did the whole article at Cincy Jungle about this, talking about if you do a bigger signing bonus, you can do a low salary in year one, push the cap hit off, but you have to spend more cash to do that. And I mean, nothing in the Bengals history says they're ready to do that, even if they do go play in free agency like they did last year, which I don't think they will. I think they'll spend. But last year they spent about $110 million in cash in the offseason, maybe 115 because Joe Burrow took a giant signing bonus on his rookie deal. I think it'll probably be closer to 80 million this year, 70 million this year. And we'll see if the other thing you're going to have to see is how does the COVID budget impact all these teams across the league? There's less revenue. Yeah, there's a cap, and yeah, these teams are loaded and they're all billionaires. But that's not how they operate their teams, right? Like they're not spending $300 million in cash in one offseason. Nobody does. And so they all have their own rules for how they want to deal with cash and liquidity. And the Bengals tend to be very conservative. So, I mean, I do think they'll spend. I just don't think they're spending on Trent Williams.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that. So you kind of talked about, and Zim, you kind of hit it on the dream scenario. I think we're kind of in the dream end game because we're starting to see a lot of guys get cut from other teams that were in bad cap situations. More notably, New Orleans, Kevin Zeitler gets cut. Jake, from your perspective, like with what's going on right now, if you were the GM, if you were GM Jake, who are you targeting for the Bengals next week around this time?
Darrell Williams. Oh, am I supposed to keep talking? You said Mitchell Schwartz, and I think Mitchell Schwartz is retiring, but we'll see what happens there. If he's healthy, sure, but I mean he's coming off a back. My co-host on Locked On NFL, I do Locked On NFL one day a week now, by the way, if you want to hear me talk about some other teams, but he's a Locked On Chiefs guy, and he said that he heard from his Chiefs guys that it's likely that Mitchell Schwartz is retiring. We'll see what happens there. He's still young. And he's still good. So if he's healthy,
he's 30, right?
I mean, he's on the other side. I think he turned 31 pretty quick, and he just had a back surgery. And if you asked me last year at this time when James Rapine was on Trent Williams, he's like, "Yeah, go get Trent Williams." I was like, "I'm scared. I'm not doing it. I don't trust it." Like last year at this time, I didn't trust it, just like I don't trust Mitchell Schwartz right now. I think that's a huge risk. And I even have people in my mentions on Twitter saying Darrell Williams is a big risk because you look at his injury history. But he's still, he's 29. He's at 28 and a half right now. And he's played 2 full seasons and 2 partial seasons, and he missed most of 2 seasons, or pretty much all the 2 seasons. But Darrell Williams, I did a stream with Joe Goodberry a couple weeks ago on Twitch, and we watched Darrell Williams against TJ Watt.
Yep, I saw that.
Daryl Williams just fuck with TJ. Sorry, can I cuss? Daryl Williams just messed with TJ Watt the whole time. Like TJ Watt was just guessing. He was lost. And how often you see TJ Watt lost? What you're going to get with Daryl Williams is some false starts. You know how Bobby Hart gets that early step? You know what I'm talking about, Bobby Hart?
Yep.
Like he tries to get a little jump because he knows he might get beat to that corner. Daryl Williams might get beat to that corner too. The difference with Daryl Williams is he's bigger and he has like 35-inch arms, and he's going to reach your ass if you try to go around the corner on him. He's going to lock you up. So there's an injury question with Daryl Williams, but I think he's everything that Bobby Hart isn't. He's an anchor. If he gets his hands on you, he can stop you, and he's not going to let go of that block. If Bobby Hart gets to the second level and he gets to a linebacker, I mean, how many times do you see him fall off that block, right? You go turn on Daryl Williams, he gets to that second level, that guy's done. I mean, everybody's going to get beat from time to time, but I think Daryl Williams is like the premier guy in the price bucket. And there's an injury risk for sure, but I mean, I'm in there. I'm in on Zeitler. I'm in on Gabe Jackson if he becomes available. I'm in on Matt Filer. Although, I mean, what scares me about Matt Filer is I watched Matt Filer against Jonathan Allen, and Jonathan Allen got Filer with that same exact bull rush that injured Joe Burrow. Same exact move. It's like spooky. It's the same move. He hugs him with his right arm. Jonathan Allen has this bull rush where he wraps I guess it's his left arm. He wraps his left arm, his inside arm around you so you can't anchor on that foot near the quarterback. And he's pulling you in with that left arm, just crunching your back, right? So imagine like a strong-ass 300-pound man bear hugging you with one arm, beating your ass with his other arm, and you're trying to anchor against that when he's stronger than you. That's what happened to Mike Jordan on that move when he fell. The only difference with Filer is he didn't fall. He stayed on his feet. So at least you got that going for you with Filer. So he's going to give it up to strength from time to time, but he's a better player than Mike Jordan. So, I mean, that's an improvement, right? You take it.
Every time I bring up Filer, it's just in the sense of I'm trying to create depth and kind of emulate the Bills formula, right? Yeah. So me going into the season and as quick as like someone like a Quentin Spain became like a Bengals like favorite, I guess for his, you know, like for him coming in a tough role at the situation that he did. I think Filer could be like that same type of mold, battle it out. Him, Xavier, Sulafilo, you could throw a Denergy in there to battle out in camp. You come back second round or whatever, right? And then those are the guards that you're talking about. Like if this is how you avoid a Jake Fisher situation. It's like you already have these guys right here that aren't going to let a Jake Fisher like talent unseat them. So if Cosme isn't who I think he is, if I don't know Leatherwood, Wyatt Davis, if these guys aren't who we think they are, we've got all these guys in place. So we're never in a situation where we're coming into a game and we're looking like what was the guy that we was talking about the other day? Ace, John Jerry. So I'm never putting myself in a John Jerry like situation. I got all of these guys in place, and so that formula that you're saying, you just named the three guys that I think they could go get.
There's so many guys.
Daryl Williams, though, Gabe Jackson, and Filer. If they came into the draft with that, you wouldn't be even if you really still had Sewell so high on your board, you wouldn't be forced to any type of pick. You wouldn't feel any type of way. You would just go take the very best guy that was in your face. And then you come back that second round to double down and say, look, this is never happening again. And I'm only saying second round hypothetically, unlike, you know, like if I like Boogie Basham. I don't know, you know, there's a lot of guys that'll be there, right? But at that point and with that mold and the way that they're doing it, that is a way better formula, given this team's injury history, to me, to assemble a team. And it's the money's there, the talent is there, and the people. I'm not getting guys that like. I think when I tell people, "Oh, well, I'm not trying to get Tooney, or I'm not. I don't have to get Sewell." They're thinking that I'm just saying, "Well, let's just get below average guys and just see how they go." Like all of those guys in a normal year, we'd probably be only talking about 1, 2 at the most. This is a very unique offseason, and with the cap going up the following year, I just think that if they're going to do it, them and only 4 or 5 other teams are even in this position to be talking about like, hey, let's go shopping. Everybody else, like you said, with what we're looking at with COVID this upcoming season or whatever, unless you got Jerry Jones like pockets, you really aren't looking at too much in this free agency, and it creates this big hole for all the mid-range veteran players that is going to be really tough for them to get on the squads, and they're going to be scrambling for squads. And I just think the Bengals can take advantage of that a lot faster than throwing money at the highest person on the open market.
Right. So we have 100 people watching the stream right now. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We truly appreciate that. Also, be sure to follow Jake on Twitter at Jake_NFL on Twitter. We talked about the offensive side.
Jake has too many followers, and he already has too many damn listeners on Locked On, so you don't have to do any of that shit. Just keep on following us, and then if Jake comes back on, then we'll come and tell you to follow him too.
But we talked about the offensive side of the ball, right? And a lot of fans started panicking because Carl Lawson basically had said or posted something right when the tag deadline passed, and it was like guns for hire, right? I wasn't really freaking out about it because I had talked to him and he said that he loved Cincinnati. So I was like, well, I'm sure there's still a great chance of us keeping him. But flipping to the defensive side of the ball, right? Because we can't talk as if he's a lock to come back, because he's not a lock to come back. If someone throws him the bag, he might just take the bag. So on the defensive side of the ball, like from a free agency aspect, especially with us only having 17 sacks last year, who would you kind of be targeting from that kind of position or from that area?
Yeah, it's a little bit thinner there. Actually, you know what? That's not even true. There's plenty of good pass rushers out there. I've talked about Romeo Okwara quite a bit. He had a hell of a finish to the season for Detroit. By some measures, as productive as Carl Lawson. I think Carl Lawson is a better player. I think Carl Lawson is more consistent. But if you buy Romeo Okwara's end of the season, you don't think that's just a flash in the pan. You think he's actually developed some skills. I really like Romeo Okwara. That's the guy Sheil Kapadia at The Athletic had going to the Bengals. Sheil had two guys in his top 50 free agents going to the Bengals, Romeo Okwara and Darrell Williams. And I mean, sign me up, right? If you get those two guys to start free agency and a bunch of guys for like $5 million after that, I'm probably pretty happy. As long as you're not paying $5 million to somebody who shouldn't be in the NFL. Like, I think they paid Trey Waynes probably too much money, but we'll not go too far down that road. On the defensive side of the ball, Hassan Reddick, Tyus Bowser, Dietrich Wise. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are, I mean, who were the Bengals playing last year? You know what I'm saying? They're playing like street free agents, and right. Sam Hubbard doesn't like me very much. I really like Sam Hubbard as a player.
He doesn't like you?
No, I called him an average pass rusher, and
I've said that to a certain extent. Well, I always say he's not an elite pass rusher.
He doesn't like that, but I get that if you're a player, you don't want to see that shit if you search your name or whatever. So I don't begrudge him it. But anyway, Sam Hubbard is not an elite pass rusher, and he's a very good player. But if you have Sam Hubbard and DJ Reader and Khalid Kareem, and I don't know, say Josh Tupou's back. I love Josh Tupou, one of my favorite players on the team. You're getting 10 sacks in a year. And I mean, so I think they need two guys. Where's my fingers? Two guys to be. Well, I'm over here and the camera's over here. You know what I mean?
If you guys are listening to this, Jake just doesn't know how to count to threes. He said, "Where are my fingers?" Hold on. All right, I was just waiting. What are your thoughts on? I've been pushing Alden Smith a lot, and I brought up Hendrickson just because I think the money might look nice. I think the sacks are a little bit like of a false, whatever. I looked at the numbers in the PFF, and he had a bunch of sacks without double teams and all that other stuff that they give me numbers on. But how do you feel about those two?
I really like Brandon Thorne. If you guys are looking for an expert on trench play, offensive line, defensive line, go follow Brandon Thorne on Twitter. I trust his opinions on offensive and defensive linemen and his ability to chart quality play at those positions more than probably anybody that's doing this stuff on Twitter that doesn't work for a team. And he says that Trey Hendrickson last year, he has a sack quality metric that he does. He goes and watches every sack that guys get in a year. And Trey Hendrickson, like, how many sacks did he have? 14?
I thought 13 and a half.
13. Whatever it was, like 10 of them were cleanup or covered sacks.
I did a highlight the other day, and I was like, all these sacks are like, they're like game sacks.
And you go watch Sam Hubbard in his first couple of years. It's a lot of the same. I mean, that's what you get when you get guys that are high motor, and that's what's great about Sam Hubbard. Sam Hubbard's motor does not quit. He has effort for days. He's not going to lose a ton in setting the edge when he's healthy. I think he was hurt early in the year. He got better late in the year setting the edge against the run, but he's not that dynamic speed rusher. He's not bull rushing guys. Like when he gets a sack, it's usually because his effort is persistent and there's been chaos created elsewhere, or, the quarterback's forced off his spot by Carl Lawson or Geno Atkins, or you've got good coverage in the back end. I think Trey Hendrickson could be a very similar player on a pretty damn good defense in New Orleans with Cam Jordan on that defensive line with him.
Right.
And he's reaping the benefits. So I think if it's Trey Hendrickson, that's a guy where he's going to need help. He can be a good complementary piece. I think he's going to get paid more than a complementary piece should get paid.
Sounds like Antoine Odom. Sounds like a little bit of Antoine Odom action there.
Antoine Odom started out hot at least,
Yeah.
And then the other one, Alden Smith. I don't really have a strong opinion on Alden Smith. I haven't gone and watched him play very much in Dallas. There's an interesting story there. If nothing else, it's an interesting story. I think that he probably is better than the pass rushers on the team. I think he's probably cheaper than some of these other guys. Like I like Hassan Reddick. I think that, you put Hassan Reddick and you give him a pure edge rusher role. He can be really good at that. I think you could get some of that out of Alden Smith, but I mean, the cliff is coming for him, man. He's walking on a foggy day toward a cliff and we don't know where it is.
Right.
And
yeah, because he was in that class with AJ. So yeah, he's on that 30. He's part of that 30. So in terms of the secondary, if you could just speak on some of your ideal targets for that and then kind of get into the draft. I guess we could kind of wrap it up with the draft in terms of your preferences there.
But speaking of secondary, hold on. Before he gets in that part, talk about William Jackson. What would you do? Would you keep William Jackson before you get into who you want to look at or target in the secondary?
Oh man, you got all my hot takes coming out right now. I would have fired Lou Anarumo. It's not really a hot take, but I mean, last night I tweeted. I'm sitting there thinking. I'm reading Twitter. I'm talking to Joe a little bit in DMs because Joe and I are close and we talk about, when stuff's on our mind. And I'm sitting here thinking like, man, are they really going to let Lou Anarumo run this defense into the ground? And it looks like the answer is yes. But here's where I'm at on Lou Anarumo.
As soon as you did that, did you see my tweet? As soon as it probably was around the same time. And I just was like, Lou's the one that had Geno lining up over center. Lou's the one, and I went like going crazy on it, like out of nowhere. And I think we all were starting to feel like this pressure of, damn, Lawson and William Jackson about to walk away.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to see that. You have two of your best defensive players. Here's what my tweet said. On March 10th, I'm not ready to kill the Bengals for sticking with Anarumo, letting him do what he wants with the defense. I'm ready to see what he does, right? I mean, at this point, that's all we can do is see what he does. We can't kill the Bengals for it right now because that's not productive. All we're doing is complaining at that point. But my knives are sharp, man. They're ready. They're ready for December, January. Even if it's November, the knives are sharp and they're ready. And I hope that I can use those knives as steak knives and I don't have to kill the Bengals. But I'm ready because you can see where this might be going and you just have to hope that Lou knows better than I do. And I think Lou knows better than I do. I'm sure Lou knows more about football than I do, but I mean, NFL teams get it wrong all the time. So I would absolutely keep William Jackson, but I don't think he does what Lou Anarumo wants to do. Lou Anarumo, I don't know if it's because he didn't trust his cornerbacks or because he didn't trust his pass rush, didn't like playing man. And William Jackson is at his best in press man. Same thing, by the way, for what's his name? The guy Butler. Butler also press man corner, very similar in style, I think, to William Jackson and strength to William Jackson. The other guy that got released today, Janoris Jenkins.
Yep.
He played for Lou Anarumo in 2018. And
Love Janoris.
I think there's a scheme fit there a little bit, but
he's 33 now.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be a 1 year kind of thing to get you by. I'm looking at a corner in the second round, probably. Joe's tweeting about Ronald Darby. You watch Ronald Darby against the Bengals this year. He had one of the best games, if not his best game of the season. He was pretty good. But there's actually quite a bit out there in the mid-range corner market and in the mid-range wide receiver market. So like, even if they don't go for those, top of market guys, I like free agency this year. And the Bengals talking a lot about flexibility, spread it out. Let's get it done.
Yeah, like, did you get the sense when you had Callahan on the show? And if you guys don't know, we're here with Jake from Locked On Bengals. He recently interviewed Brian Callahan, the offensive coordinator for the Bengals. They had a 3-part series that I did listen to every single one of them, and I really, really enjoyed it. Did you get the sense that in you talking to him, whether it be on air, off the air, that you thought they'd be kind of aggressive? Because so far, I've read the comments in here, and people were like, "Jake is just scaring me." I saw somebody right there say, "Yeah, I don't think they're not going to be as active as they were last year or whatever." So, what was the sense that you got after talking to Callahan?
I mean, I don't think Callahan necessarily has the control.
But don't you think but if he was pushing for guys or he was pushing for a certain type of thing, you don't feel like he had an aggression to like what he was talking about? Like, if he thought they were going to go heavy offensive line in the offseason or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, if you listen to Callahan, I think he knows the offensive line needs to be better. You listen to Taylor. I haven't listened to it yet. He went on the Bengals beat with Lindsey and Tyler today. So I got to go listen to that and see what he said. But the impression I get from Duke, from Brian, from Zach, listening to the organization, talking to Callahan, is they know the offensive line isn't good enough. And it's probably, I think they know it's the guys they had. I don't think they're relying on Frank Pollock to fix everything. I asked Brian, I said, you guys had really high expectations for some of these guys last year. How does that go wrong? Like last year going into the season, if you're paying attention, we knew you guys weren't going to make major changes on the offensive line. You guys were projecting a lot of confidence. And he said, what happened? I said, what happened? And he said, he talked about the familial relationship that you establish with the players on your team. A little fatherly thing or whatever it is. They're your guys and you want them to succeed. You see what they're doing behind closed doors, working hard, doing what you ask them to do. And for whatever reason, they don't get it done. Right. So I think that was like a hard lesson that they had to learn. Maybe that's something that comes with being a young, inexperienced coach in the NFL. Like you have to learn, like, hey man, you got to stay objective. It's a hard business. And Duke's, I think Duke said, pretty clearly they're looking to improve the offensive line. So I think we will see them spend on multiple players on the offensive line. And the other thing that has been a consistent theme is speed at wide receiver. If it's, I've talked about him a lot lately. Amir Smith-Marset, Iowa wide receiver, probably a day 3 guy. Looks like he has great speed, had several kickoff return touchdowns, deep threat for Iowa when they had a quarterback. They didn't have a quarterback in 2020, so he looked a lot worse in terms of his productivity. 6'1", 180 or so, a little bit thinner than Marvin Jones was. But if you're looking for your Marvin Jones this year, that's a guy that you might want to look at. But I think they're looking for speed at wide receiver, which does often make me wonder what happened with John Ross. But those are the themes on offense. I think they will add 2+ offensive linemen, probably starters. And I think they're looking for a wide receiver with speed. And I think they'll look in free agency. I'm not sure they're going to find what they want in free agency at the price they want. So it might be a later round guy. But personally, for me, I do think that there's a lot to be said for going wide receiver or Kyle Pitts with their first pick, if it's 5 or if they trade back a little bit, because I think you can get to average on the offensive line without spending that pick on Sewell. And I think Chase fixes a lot of what was wrong with this offense.
Chase at 5, baby. We got one.
Yeah, I'm there for sure. I'm there. Best wide receiver in the class. Yeah.
Woo! How do you feel about that? Ace, best wide receiver in the class right there, Chase.
I don't think it's as definitive. I think it's still between him and Devonta Smith. Like, I think if you're gonna side with it being because Chase has more weight and stuff, yeah. But I think, me personally, I think Devonta is right there. I think Waddle's right there too. I think the three guys at the top are all good.
I like Waddle a lot. I watched your film. I watched you watch Devonta Smith a little bit. I had to leave partway through it. I do think that his size will show up in the NFL. I think that when guys get their hands on him and there's better athletes in the NFL, he stops. And you can get him off his spot. You can get him off his route. I think you'll see that a little bit more in the NFL. I do still think he's really good. Like, he's got a great release package. He's a silky athlete, and he has good route running skills. He's a good technician. And he has a lot of will to win at the catch point. But I think the physicality is going to show up a little bit in the NFL. I still think he's going to be very good. But Jamar Chase had insane production at 19 years old, man. He did some crazy things. And I mean, you don't know that he's gotten better.
Right.
But I imagine that he's gotten
I wouldn't. So for me, I think, like, just because Chase has played with Burrow, that makes him the best for me, like, just because they already had that chemistry and stuff like that. So I think for our situation, I definitely go with Chase, given those three guys, just because of that connection and all of that. But I just think like overall, when we look at this draft class 3, 4, 5 years from now, I think that is going to be like a AJ Green kind of Julio Jones kind of thing, where like both of them are going to be good. Like, it's not going to, like, you kind of get to pick your poison because they're two different receivers. That's the way that I kind of see it, versus it being kind of like a AJ Green versus kind of like a Torrey Smith kind of thing, or a guy that's like not even in that same like stratosphere.
And I'm not sure these guys are quite AJ Julio, but I think they're
right.
Really, really good. I mean, AJ Julio.
Yeah, they've got much smaller. Yeah, this class is kind of weird because it's kind of more of a smaller kind of receiver class. Just like in general, you don't really have those like huge 6'3", like you said, AJ and Julio guys that are like 6'3" freaks of nature, run 4.4s. It's kind of hovering at like the 6'1" to like 6 foot kind of guys, but that may just be the future of like the receivers. It may be a bunch of AB, Steve Smith, Chad Johnson kind of guys coming.
And there are a lot of guys in the second round too. And that's the thing, is like the reason that you wouldn't take Chase 5 and the reason you would just take Sewell is because you're really high on Sewell for one. But there's guys in the second round like
Terrace Marshall.
Marshall's probably there. Diami Brown from UNC. I really like. There's a chance, there's an outside chance you get Kadarius Toney in the second round. Yep. And if you think that you can polish up some of his rawness, and Chase has some rawness too in his game. He was able to win just by being better athletically. He's going to have to clean some of that up. So, I mean, there are guys in the later rounds. You look at the recent track record of early wide receivers versus second round wide receivers. It tells you that you can still get guys in the second round. That doesn't, I mean, you look individually at players, and I think Chase is an insanely good prospect. I think Waddle and Smith are good prospects, but you can still get guys.
Wasn't Justin Jefferson drafted like 33 or something like that?
He was first round, late 20s, I want to say.
Okay.
Right.
T. Higgins was 33.
I'm about to say Higgins was 33. All right.
That's the one thing that
Brandon Ayuk and like Terry McLaurin. Like, I'm thinking about those guys, right?
There's a bunch of guys. Allen Robinson, like Jarvis Landry.
I mean,
Mapletron, even though we hate the Steelers, like, there's a lot of guys that you can still good.
Claypool.
They call him Mapletron.
I never heard that nickname until James. You know what's so funny? James went to Cleveland and he came back with all these nicknames, and they were calling Landry Juice and stuff like that. And then yeah, but I mean, he's just Landry. There's only one Juice, and it's OJ, and he's wearing gloves and stuff like that.
And then you got Tyler Boyd. So like for me, it's always tough because it's like, yeah, but I could still get a guy like as good or close to as good in the second and sometimes even third round. You talk
about tackle too.
Exactly. So it's just tough, man. It's kind of tough to determine which way to kind of go. Like, based off of everything to go, especially with free agency still left.
See, I think when my plan is so predicated on getting a playmaker to just blow this thing wide open, because I know that the defense is just going to. I just count on the defense struggling. I need the defense to be in a position to always be up like 7 to 10 points, like every single week. So I think that's part of my plan. And when I talked about second round, because Jake, this is the first time I heard anyone even talk about a corner second round. Usually, like for me, I've been looking at, and I try not to do this. I've been looking at edge rushers. The kid from Miami, I like a lot, and then Basham, I really like a lot too in the Carlos Dunlap mold. And then I've been looking at so many guards and tackle prospects that can be converted to guards in the NFL level that I just got so glued to that. And for you to like now throw like corner in second round, it just
you don't like Kyle Pitts? Do you like Kyle Pitts, Jake?
Yeah. Do I like him at 5? That gets a little scary because he's a tight end.
You're only saying that because of the history of the NFL says so and dictates it, right?
No. I mean, a little bit, but no. The history of the NFL at tight end is that tight ends, a lot of the times, no matter how talented they are,
it's the hardest position.
Take a little bit of time to figure it out at the NFL.
Tight end and linebackers. That was the first thing. Like me and Ace did a show. I want to say this is like October or something like that. And I was like, man, Kyle Pitts is like really, like amazing. But I was like, hey, the hardest positions to transition from college to NFL is linebacker and tight end, and it's just growing pains. And I told a story about how T.J. Hawkinson, one of my friends, is like a real big Lions fan. He was just like, man, I just knew they was going to take over. And I'm like, dude, it's going to take a little while. But I think Kyle Pitts, the way that they would use him, though, although I'm scared, I'm kind of scared. They're going to use everything that they try to run for Tyler Eifert. They're going to run that same exact package for Kyle Pitts, which is not enough for me. And
not to take away from what he did off the field, but I think you should use him like Aaron Hernandez. Like that's the way that you should use Kyle Pitts is. Use him as like a receiver. Like you can use him at tight end.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like that, they use Eifert at, like in his last days here. They used him as just strictly a wide receiver. And I think that, but it was limited though. And I think the Orange want to make it limited is the same reason that they've had problems before. They have problems when they have like a superior talent or a superior attribute like a John Ross or whatever, like that is really good at one thing. They fail to utilize them and get them on the field because they're trying to get CJ Uzomah back into the fold, or they're trying to get Drew Sample locked in with, whatever, and they'll lose sight of like the true talent that I think Kyle Pitts is. And then that's where I think he will fall flat on his face as far as being a Bengal. I think the fit for me for Kyle Pitts isn't the greatest, but it's kind of weird to say that because Kyle Pitts to me works anywhere and he's going to produce. But with this coaching staff, if it was Brian Callahan leading the whole thing, I know that Brian Callahan will figure out a way to utilize just straight up Kyle Pitts, every single package, figure it out. But it's not that way. And I don't think it would be like that. And that's the only reason why I wouldn't want Kyle Pitts.
The reason I like Kyle Pitts is when you look around this division, you have to look at who's going to be guarding him. Like, what linebacker in this division do you think could really guard Kyle Pitts? Like the AFC North, we've been known, like from a historic standpoint, for having these great defenses and these great linebackers. But when you look at it from like last year, like a lot of the linebackers are pretty suspect. Like you look at the Browns linebackers, that's a weakness. You talk about the Ravens, they have the kid that they just took from LSU. He's all right, but he's not, definitively, you can't really trust him against any tight end that's going to be a receiver. Then you look at the Steelers, you got Devin Bush, but even he had some issues like covering.
Devin Bush on Kyle Pitts, I take Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Pitts all day.
Devin Bush is like 5'6".
We picked on Highsmith. They got so Jake, I don't know if you know, I run the Steelers versus Bengals page on Instagram as well, but they're really high on Highsmith. And we picked on Highsmith.
I like Highsmith.
Well, we picked on Highsmith in that second game. We killed that was one of the
Highsmith is an edge rusher.
Yeah, he's an edge rusher.
On that game, they had him dropping back in a couple of different sets.
I'd pick on any edge rusher that's dropping in.
right.
You don't do that shit.
Because when Bush was hurt, and then they did a lot of different things where they were trying to figure out like how they're going to compensate for him.
Yeah, they were struggling. As soon as he went down, because
I don't look at Kyle Pitts as such a singular, like, can he beat this guy? Can he beat that guy? Like, I don't think it's that simple for like not just the division. It's just about utilization and how fast will they be able to get him like in the system and make it work? I just don't have faith in the Bengals staff to make him like pop off. Like say he goes something crazy. Like if he went, I don't know who the quarterback would be, but like Eagles or somebody like that. I don't know. Like I just think that they would use him a lot more.
No, they would. I totally agree with you guys on that. I mean, this is a team that was giving Tyler Boyd instead of John Ross end around. So I don't think it's too far-fetched to say if we did get him that they wouldn't be able to use him right. It's just, to me, it's just weird because when you look at Zach Taylor's first year and you look at that game where they utilized John Ross like perfectly, it's almost like you kind of scratch your head when it's like this season they're just not using them the right way. And it's like, Zim, we looked this whole season and we're like, that's a play that you could have gave to John Ross, like an end around. Like, it's just kind of puzzling with some of the stuff that they do. So I do agree with you. Like, if they did get Kyle Pitts, are they going to use him right? I think that's a valid question for sure.
There's a dude in your comments right now comparing Kyle Pitts to Jermaine Gresham. And I would encourage you to go watch Kyle Pitts and then watch Jermaine Gresham.
And then go watch Darren Waller.
And see how crazy ass different athletes they are. Jermaine Gresham was a fine prospect at tight end, but Kyle Pitts has some very rare traits as a receiver in his ability to control his body, to get up and win that ball at the catch point, to separate, to get in and out of his breaks, his release package. Like he's beating Patrick Surtain Jr. out of press coverage as a tight end. And he's just beating him with his release package. He's just beat at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, he's going to be insane. I hope if we don't get him that he just doesn't end up in the division somehow. Like that would not be good.
I can't
see him falling that far.
That happens. Like
I can't see him falling.
12 is his floor. I feel like 11, maybe 10. Yeah, I mean Pitts is a guy that I really like. If they move back to 8 with Carolina, that's where I'm looking at it. Like if they go back to 8, I'm looking. You're probably picking between like Waddle, Pitts, Farley at that point.
Right.
Maybe Slater, but I don't think the Bengals love Slater. I think that, and this is a Callahan thing. You heard him talk about the size of the AFC North.
Right.
I think that if they go, I mean, this is the same issue with Riley Reiff, actually. Riley Reiff is like the same build as Jonah Williams as Rashawn Slater. And that's why I don't think they're necessarily in on Riley Reiff either. I think they want somebody a little bit bigger. So it's an interesting draft because a lot of the guys they could take at 5, I think you can do really well with those same positions in round 2, which is why I want them to not need anything when they get to the draft. So use those free agency resources, right? And then get to the draft, be flexible, be able to trade back and still get value. Because if you trade back and add a second-round pick at the top of the second round, and then you go, say it is Pitts, right? Say it is Pitts at 8, and you have 2 picks in the 30s, high 40s, right? And then you come back and you get a guy like Alex Leatherwood and Asante Samuel Jr.
Right. I was about to say, then you're absolutely looking at corner. To me, if you pick up that extra pick, yeah, that's when I'm entertaining a corner, and the board is like super crazy. If you don't get to 8, 9, you wouldn't even. Somebody asked me about Slater because I don't know if you saw the video of him lifting today. Yeah. Did you see that? So a lot of
squat.
Yeah. So a lot of people hit me and said, "Well, now Slater's on the board." I'm like, "No, you're not looking at Slater unless you get down to like the 10 spot."
Yeah, there's Slater gang. I think even Watson Football came out today, and he came out with like some of his rumors. And they were saying that a lot of GMs and scouts think that Slater's overrated. Like they named Slater, they named Patrick Surtain, and they named Michael Parsons, and there was someone else, but Slater was in there. They said that they felt like Slater's a second-round pick. It should be a guard.
There's definitely scouts that are going to feel that way. There's old school scouts that are going to feel that way. Then there's guys that are going to look at him and see he can play tackle.
Just off his arm. Just off his arms, they're going to say that.
Well, but, I mean, look at Tevin Jenkins. Tevin Jenkins, who people love his power, love his, mean streak. He has 32.5-inch arms. You want me to believe that an NFL team is going to announce a 32.5-inch arm offensive? Like, most teams have a 33-inch cutoff. There's maybe a couple guys below that playing tackle in the NFL. The NFL does not believe in short-arm guys playing tackle. They don't. James Hudson has the same problem out of UC. There's a lot. Jackson Carman, the Cincinnati kid from Clemson, same deal. So, yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see, right? Because is the NFL going to be cool with it? Is there going to be a shift? Are we going to have more short arm guards? The thing about these combine workouts, by the way, most of them should be validating what you see on tape. Rashawn Slater running well and weighing what he weighed and lifting well. That all balances what you see on tape. He has great bursts off the line of scrimmage, gets to the second level like a rocket, and he has great upper body strength. But where he loses is to power. And it's just because, and to length, and it's just because of his dimensions. It has nothing to do with anything he can control. I mean, maybe he can gain 5-10 pounds in an NFL program, but probably not that. Like, he's probably pretty close to maxed out.
Slater game just took a L. The Slater game just took a L. But no, I mentioned him just because he popped up today. But let me just close it out by saying this: first free agent signing. I'll bet you Uber. Do you have Uber Eats there in Canada? No?
We do, but I think the province that I live in British Columbia, I think they're really strict on the rideshare stuff.
I was going to say, I will bet you, how about this? I bet you a drink. I want you to guess right now. Ace, I want you to guess too. Who was the first free agent signing Bengals have going across the screen? Ace, you go first. Jake next.
Carl Lawson.
Jake
Brandon Wilson.
Smart man.
That's actually really good. I was gonna say Carl Lawson, but Brandon Wilson is really about to happen. That's really
Brandon Wilson's definitely happening.
Or Alex Erickson. I would love it if it's Carl Lawson though.
Does it have to? Okay, are the stipulations that it has to be when free agency starts? Because Brandon Wilson could.
I think. All right. Let me ask you this though. We're just all in the whole agreement that William Jackson is just gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. I mean, I don't have any sources or anything, so guys, don't take this as me saying that. But no, I just can't see it, bro.
I think the team, I think this is one of those things where, like Carlos Dunlap, the front office and the coaching staff are split. And I bet you the front office is like, we want William Jackson back. And they wanted Carlos Dunlap back. And then the coaching staff's like, we don't like the fit. And they learn from what happened with Carlos Dunlap, and that's just a guess at what might happen there.
Okay. All right.
I hope he's back.
You gotta still give us a player though, Zim. You gotta still give us one.
I'm gonna go. Give me.
Why don't we do this?
Give me Quentin Spain.
There you go. Make it more interesting. How about a player that is not on the Bengals right now? First non-Bengal unrestricted free agent they sign.
First non-Bengal. I'm actually gonna go with. I think I'll take Janoris Jenkins.
Give me Blythe, just because of the connection with Zach Taylor. I'll say Blythe.
That's why I'm going with Janoris.
That would be a late one though. Hold on, they wouldn't.
BW Webb. I hate BW Webb.
That's a tough.
It's hard because you don't even know who they're in on. I
have no clue.
I would guess. I think they are going to be interested in Zeitler, and I think Zeitler would be interested in coming back. I actually think that.
Yeah.
I think I was listening to the Hobson or somebody, and they said that they left on good terms. So. Hobson was on your show, right? And he said that they left on there was no bad blood or something like that.
I don't think there was bad blood, but my understanding of Kevin Zeitler's departure from Cincinnati was he wanted to be back. I think the Bengals knew they were not going to be able to touch what he was going to get on the open market, but what I heard was they did not even make him an offer.
That's what I heard too. I heard they never made him an offer, like at all. And I feel like the same thing is going to happen with William Jackson. They're like not even. I feel like
you listen to Carl. They haven't even started negotiating. You listen to Paul today. Carl said they haven't started.
Yeah,
which is mind blowing. If that's true.
Like I think that they were waiting for the salary cap to set, but you would have thought, like Jake said, that at least today
they're not in a position. They're not even in a position to do that with that room right now. They're not in a position not to be waiting for the cap. Like
I mean, it was like a $5 million window Really, realistically, it's like it
Right.
wasn't going to be higher than 185, and they knew that.
And then it came in at what, 182?
182 and a half. Yeah.
And like the crazy thing is, he's saying he doesn't want like crazy money either.
Really?
He like said that on the show. He was like, it's not like it's not like I need much to.
Somebody's going to offer him a bag, though.
Somebody's going to offer him.
I'm
a
about to
bag.
say, I don't care if he thinks that he's.
As soon as they drop the bag on him,
Somebody
it's
about to
going to be a
offer
problem.
something crazy.
As long as he doesn't end up in Cleveland, I'm honestly okay with
Yeah.
it.
I can see him popping up on the screen. Jaguars.
Sure.
Oh, Jaguars
They
would
have
definitely
infinity
cover the
money.
bag.
They got all the money. This is, you got to go get the bag. Injury history aside, his agent's probably in his ear just saying, hey, look, this is your one opportunity to go get it.
If
He
I'm the
did say
Bengals-
that though. He did say that. He was like, if somebody says, "Here's 50 million and here's 5 million," and you're like, "Oh, I want to play in this game," he's like, "That's not going to matter if someone drops the bag."
I like the I don't like the code. Here's $50 million. All right, I'm gonna go get my coat.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
I like
That's
that.
exactly how it's going. Jake, tell everybody where they can find you at. If they've been under a rock and they don't know what's going on with the Bengals world, tell them where you at.
All right, if I'm allowed to self-promote, Jake_NFL on Twitter, at Locked On Bengals. Go find the podcast. We're up 5 days a week, which is sometimes exhausting, but right now is actually a lot of fun because we got free agency coming up. I know fans are listening. We're up like 30% this week. Y'all are excited for free agency. I know you're out there, so come check us out 5 days a week, most of the year. In the summer, we might go down to 3 days a week because there's literally nothing happening in the NFL in June. But I appreciate anybody who comes and checks it out, and I appreciate all y'all for having me on and y'all watching for watching.
Appreciate you.
got-
What you better?
No, I was going to say you guys can help support the channel by getting all your Bengals gear, including the 2021 Bengals jerseys. Check the links. We also have Zim that's doing some cross promo with some pretty dope stuff. You can get signatures and all of that. Please be sure to follow him on Instagram at Zim_Hude. Zim, did you want to say something about that before we get out?
With that, check out my link in my Instagram on Zim_Hude. And also I'll be posting on my Twitter too on Zim_Hude. I'm doing a promotion with TSE Cincinnati. They've got a bunch of memorabilia, 100% authentic. They got Tyler Boyd jerseys going for $69 right now. They got Ken Anderson memorabilia being sold, Joe Burrow jerseys signed, all this stuff signed. Icky Woods pylon signed. So check out that link. It's got some real cool stuff. A lot of savings on it underneath market value right now. So if you're into collecting stuff before these new jerseys come out, please make sure you check that out. And always check out Zimhude.com.
Yeah, definitely. You can find me at New Stripe City on YouTube. This has been the Orange is the New Black podcast. Thanks, Jake, for coming on. And we're going to leave you guys with a Hude.
Hello, world. What separated your deep ball from everybody else?
My deep ball, it had